institutionalization of profession is, if you see, in 1992, less than 1% of US hospitals had ethics committees. See, most of the good hospitals, even in India today, have ethics committees. Particularly medical colleges have ethics committees, and it's compulsory that they should have. Even hospitals also have, many hospitals have ethics committees. These committees will examine whether all ethical norms are followed when the hospitals adopt certain practices as protocols. Okay. Or when they do indulge in research, when they go for clinical research or any other kinds of research, even social research also, you need to have the approval of ethics committees, prior approval of the ethics committees to conduct research in different fields. So hospitals, when they do all these things, will have to, it's mandatory that they need to take the permission of ethics committee. So they need to constitute an ethics committee. Ethics committees are constituted by people from different fields. Like there will be doctors, there will be other kinds of health professionals. There could be political leaders. There could be sociologists or anthropologists, philosophers or ethicists, and various other people from the different walks of the life. Sometimes even religious leaders are invited because they have to take care of whether the religious values are respected, are not violated. Sometimes, certain practices might involve in the violation of certain religious beliefs and all that. To what extent legally this can be problematic has to be decided before they adopt a certain practice. So this is normally done. But so that is why in this context we have to understand that, in 92, this is about US. 92, less than 1% of US hospitals had ethics committees, but now it is more than 90%, or now it is almost more than 95%, because this is an old data. Again, many scientific laboratories now train scientists in ethics. They appoint ethics officers. It's very important that, people who are involved in scientific research, particularly medical research, where what they do will have a direct impact on the life of other people in a significant manner. Okay, they have to be sensitized about ethical issues. They need to anticipate that, okay, these are certain issues, ethical issues that are involved in the practices and that needs to be taken care of. Corporations are hiring ethics consultants. So now organizations in many countries, in many organizations, many top organizations are nowadays appointing ethics officers, or they take ethics consultations with experts in ethics and philosophy and sociology and all that. So they do that because, it's very important that there is a larger awareness among the common public, and also governments are also worried whether organizations are respecting, are honoring the ethical values that are important. Okay. And there are many organizations which very frequently organize ethics workshops and for their employees. Okay, where several cases are discussed, situations are discussed in the meetings, and they would probably provide a training to their employees in how to tackle, how to negotiate with ethical situations or ethical issues that they might encounter in their professional life. We are living in a world, as I already mentioned, where our lives are increasingly affected by decisions taken by others, particularly by experts in certain, because our life depends a lot on experts. When you go to a hospital, I'm just citing this example because this is quite obvious in the case of medicine. When you go to a hospital, you are almost completely dependent on a doctor's opinion. Because you are dealing with a domain where you are completely unaware of what is happening. But the doctor is apparently a person with reasonably good years of experience. Okay, the dependence on professional bodies are rapidly increased, and the increase in the volume of stakeholders in professional services, it brings in more perspectives and more diversity. Okay, because there are different people involved in situations. I was the other day I was discussing with a friend of mine who worked in South Africa in a bank, in an international bank, and he was telling me that his bank had nine members in the board who are from different countries in the world and sometimes different continents. So, out of nearly about 10 or 12 people in the board, nine of them were from different countries and different cultures and different continents. So, you can imagine the kind of diversity these people will bring in. And what is the importance of diversity, which I have already pointed out? Each country or each society or community may have its own values. So different value systems come together. So these stakeholders come from different value backgrounds, okay, and different perspectives. And this might sort of introduce a lot of complexities to the situations. When you take a decision, people from different value environments come together and negotiate. And here, since there are possibilities of sharp ethical differences, there is room for ethical scrutiny. Okay, so we are living in a world where we have to very repeatedly be aware of the fact that our activities, our decisions, what we do, uh, they are all very constantly being scrutinized by other people. I was talking about, when you say that one needs to be responsible, I was talking about the individual, what the individual can do, what the individual users can do, what you and I can do. But now we also need to change the situation. We also need to change the institution, the society, because our society is getting increasingly corrupted. Our officers are corrupted. It's very difficult to get something done from a public office without paying some money as bribe. So everywhere there is bribery, everywhere there is corruption, every institution is corrupt. So we are living in a world which is a very unfair world, we can say. And there is a need that we need to have mechanisms to sort of check this, to control this. And there are many such mechanisms. Government itself has initiated several such initiatives are there. See, there are, of course, one of the responsibilities of police is to address these issues because there are law and order situations related to this. But there is also certain mechanisms required from the people, and also more direct response to the movement for greater accountability should be there. So how do we really achieve this is the question. So here it is very important to understand how the institutions function, the mechanism by means of which the different institutions function in this society. And then by understanding their functioning, we can actually understand the way in which one can deal with them with responsibility. Or rather, we will understand the concept of responsibility in relation with these institutions, different institutions. Okay, so it's here we need something called institutional ethics. Okay, the concept of institutional ethics, which is not just personal ethics or even professional ethics. The institutionalization of ethics becomes important. And it's a new paradigm. It's a deviation from the focus on individual vices like bribery, extortion, greed, personal gain, sexual misconduct, which are quite common in a working space in any country. For example, bribery, there is personal gain, people do for personal gains, sexual harassment, and all these things. But they are all individual acts, okay, where individuals are involved in these wrong practices. What is required is to understand how we can really go beyond, rather focus beyond the individual actions to the institutional mechanisms. Focus on the institutional vices. Okay, something like abuse of power, where institutions might try to sort of, because every institution, every professional institution might be possessing a lot of power with it. Okay, all kinds of power. And there could be abuse of power also. See, for example, a hospital. Hospitals can indulge in many unethical practices because they are very powerful organizations, not in terms of money and influence and all that, but Basically, they deal with certain things which other people are not really aware of. So that makes them powerful. Then improper disclosures, excessive secrecy, lack of accountability, these are all common unfair, unethical, and illegal practices in which different organizations are indulging. Okay, so we need to have some mechanism to counter these practices. So we need to focus on vices, not individual vices, but institutional vices. But at the same time, we should know that they are interrelated. Okay, they are not completely detached from one another. They are interrelated, and individual vices are they originate in face-to-face relations among individuals, while institutional vices need to set standards for impersonal relations among people. See, this is where we need to work on institutional ethics. We need to set standards for impersonal relations among people, that people are related at various levels. See, when you go to an organization, when you buy a product, uh, your relationship is not with that shop alone, but the whole institution on the one hand, and also more directly to the organization which has produced that particular product. Okay, so you never know to which individuals are involved in this process, but you know that an institution as such is uh, responsible. We'll conclude our discussion on this. In institutional ethics and individual ethics are interrelated, but at the same time, they are different. They share certain common moral foundation, no doubt about it, because institutions also work within a society where there is a common moral framework present. And individual ethics aim at making individuals morally better, while institutional ethics seeks to make institutions better by making their leaders more accountable or their practices more transparent and legal and ethical. Okay, now we'll come to understand some ethical issues that might be important, that might be relevant in the context of organizations, individuals working in organizations like factories and other places. There are several ethical issues they might encounter. Okay, there are multiple issues. I'm not touching upon all of them. There are definitely multiple issues. We'll focus on a few of them. Okay, so there are certain issues which are directly related to the health of people who are involved, health problems. And that too works at various levels. See, for example, the employee's health. Okay, because the employees are working in say, for example, a group of employees are working in a factory where they have very unsafe working conditions, which might directly have an impact on their health. Okay, and in the long run, they all become sick and die. What is the use then? Is the company responsible for this? There are several such complex questions. So it is one of the primary responsibilities of an organization to ensure safe working conditions so that the employee safety and employee health are well taken care of. At the same time, health problems which are raised within an organizational context is not confined to the employees' working conditions alone, but quite often what happens is that some of the practices in which an organization is involved in will have impact on the health of other people, health of the society. See, a chemical organization can be really a threat to the society, to the place where, to the people in the surrounding area, because it might pollute, it might discharge some very toxic substances to the environment. What comes to my mind is the Bhopal tragedy, which happened several decades ago in India. Thousands of people died overnight, within hours. Thousands of people died. Not just people, thousands of people, animals, cattle, even plants were affected. And that entire area is highly contaminated even today. They have not cleaned it up. The company, Union Carbide Limited, which is a multinational company, never took the responsibility of what has happened. And Warren, what is his name? I forgot. The CEO of the company, overnight he escaped. Okay, he escaped to US and he had a very what do you call lucrative life in one of the islands in the US after he escaped from the law in India. So the police could not catch him, and we never got any help from the US government also to catch him and to bring him under the law. But this is what has happened. Thousands of people, even now, there are people who suffer. The endosulfan incident in Kerala, when this endosulfan, which is a chemical substance which was sprayed as pesticide in some of the areas, which affected the health of people. Generations of people are affected. These are all direct activities that will have direct impact on the lives of people. Another set of activity, if you focus on, there are questions about privacy of employees. See, for example, I'll just give you a situation. An organization suspects that some of the confidential information of this organization was discussed in a local newspaper. Okay, I forgot the details of this particular case, so I'm just presenting it as a story. Okay, once a very reputed periodical carried a story on some of the decisions this particular organization is likely to make in near future, and these were extremely confidential information about these are discussed by the board members, and also some decisions were taken by the company to implement these decisions. But this information got leaked to the press, and this particular periodical carried a cover story about it. This information was very useful for the competitors of the firm. So naturally, it was damaging for this institute, for this organization. So they wanted to find out how did the press, get this information from who leaked this info. They suspect that somebody from the organization leaked it. Okay, without someone from the organization leaking this information to the press, such a confidential information will never get to the press. Okay, so they were suspecting one or a group of individuals in the organization in doing this. So they wanted to find out who did this. So what they did is they filed a complaint to the local authority, to the police, and the police, with the help of the police, they got investigated the telephone calls of nearly 3,000 employees of the organizations. Everything was, scrutinized, whom they have contacted in the past few weeks, and how many minutes they have talked with whom. So these are all actually confidential information. Why should someone else know that I have talked to X or Y? Okay, that is my privacy. Why should someone, no one has the right to know about it. Of course, the police can investigate. Police can investigate only if my action will have an impact on, or rather, it is going to have a very, damaging impact at the interest of the society. But here, just an organization wanted to know about it. Their telephones were scrutinized, and call details were scrutinized, examined, and all that. This is a clear case of invasion of privacy. And this is what the organization did, which is very unethical and illegal. So, privacy is very important for each one of us. And what is privacy? Privacy is not secrecy. See, there are certain information about me which I would like to keep as my private information. That doesn't mean that it is a top secret. There are many things about me which are not secrets at all. About my height, for example, my body complexion, okay, and my age to some extent, my nationality to some extent. These are all not confidential information, but there are certain other things which I don't want to discuss with others, or I don't want others to know about it. My relationships with some people, my sexual orientation. These are highly confidential information or private information which I don't want others to know. Now, again, to whom I talk, my relationships with other people. How intensive are my relationship with other people? These are things which I don't want others to know. But by tapping my telephone, government can know about it. And here exactly something which is very similar to that has happened. The company has scrutinized the calls made by their employees. So this is an unnecessary invasion into the privacy of individuals, which is wrong, which is unethical. Privacy is very important because it is privacy that gives me a lot of pride, individual pride and self-esteem and all that. Okay. And if there are certain information about me, if other people come to know that, that will be extremely, what you call, unpleasant for me, uncomfortable for me. I don't want that to happen. Another set of issues might arise because of conflicts of interest. Conflict of interest is a very well-known ethical issue where there are different interests that might conflict with each other. See, for instance, my personal interest and my organization's interest. I've already cited an example where I, working in an organization as a senior managerial level, and my organization has bestowed upon me the responsibility of hiring some people. So I can hire, say, 20 people in my organization. What I do is that I just hire all my friends and relatives. So 20 people, 20 of my friends and relatives got jobs. Okay, so that's because that was my personal interest. It was my personal interest. I value their friendship and relationships. So I gave them jobs. But it is against the interest of my company because my company wanted people who are really, really efficient. Efficiency should have been given importance rather than personal relationships. So I should have gone for this appointment in a professional manner. I should have asked someone else to do that. If I'm the appointing authority in an organization, if my very close relative is an applicant, it's always better for me to keep away from the process. Okay, I should keep away from the process by informing others that, okay, this guy is my relative and I don't want to be a decision maker in this case. You take the decision, whatever you feel is professionally competent. If this person is competent or incompetent, it's up to you to decide. I will not be part of the decision making community and I should step aside. At least for that one candidate, I should not be part of the decision making process. So this is called, negotiating or rather dealing with situations where there are conflict of interest. Okay. So it's very important that in a professional world, we should try to avoid or we should try to overcome situations of conflicts of interest. Conflict of interest is not a bad thing. It will happen. All of us, it will happen. But we should try to overcome them. We should negotiate with them and try to overcome them. Then another set of problem that comes to my mind is sexual harassment. There are a lot of complaints. The recent Me Too revelations to some extent are many of such things have happened in working places where, power relationships matter a lot. So sexual harassment can happen in any domain, between seniors and juniors, between teachers and students, between political leaders and their followers, between boss and the employee. All kinds of situations, all kinds of scenario where this can happen, and this needs to be avoided. Not just avoided, it's illegal. It is a criminal act. Sexual harassment is a criminal act. And this needs to be overcome. And a lot of issues that might arise from interpersonal relationships. What happens if you try to understand the organizational context? Let's try to understand this various issues which we have discussed from a broader context, the organizational context. In the organizational context, the top management fixes the organizational role. So every organization will have its own goals, its own certain objectives to be achieved, and that objective needs to be achieved by every individual in different manners, in different ways, and by following certain values. And the value environment of the organization is very closely associated with this set of organizational goals. And employees and employers are related to each other in terms of a set of mutual obligations, which would ultimately facilitate the materialization of these goals, the organizational goals. So their relationship is very important, employers and employees. There are obligations. The employers have certain obligation towards their employees. Okay, because the lives of these employees depend a lot on the decisions these employers make. Say, suppose an employer makes a decision to lay off, to cut 100 jobs. What will happen? 100 people are losing their jobs. Their life is under threat. So a decision which the employer takes in this regard is very important. But at the same time, there are occasions where employers may have to take such tough decisions. See, for example, if 100 jobs are not cut, that is going to affect the overall performance of the organization, and in a short period of time, the organization will collapse. Suppose if such a drastic step is not being taken, which might ultimately lead to the collapse of the organization. So the entire employers and employees of the organization and the stakeholders will impact. So to avoid a greater impact, sometimes, employers will choose a decision, a choice. I mean, their choice will be, the damage will be done to a very few number of people. But try to minimize the damage. Do take decisions with responsibility. That's very important. And it's very important that, in an organization to function peacefully, with the set of organization goals in mind, employees have to obey organizational superiors. It's very important that there should be some level of, people have to obey what the superiors say. Pursue the organizational goals and avoid any activities that might threaten establishment, or rather the materialization of the organizational goal. That's very important. Sometimes it happens that employees might get indulged in certain activities which might ultimately damage the very function of the organization. They should keep away from such things. And employers need to provide the employee with a fair wage and fair working conditions. That is reiterated, no doubt in that. The employees should be fairly compensated for their labor, and at the same time, they should be provided with fair working conditions. Okay, so there are standards set by the institution, the organizational communities about fair working conditions and all that. Say, for example, we have a norm called 8 hours, 8 into 3. 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, and for other activities, and 8 hours for sleep. So 8 into 3, 24 hours a day. So to keep this in mind, it is very important that the employers should not make their employees work more than 8 hours a day. Whether this happens in the actual world or not is a different question. Quite often this is not happening in many organizations, but this is a fair rule. And ethically, that is very important. And when it comes to if you focus on the individual employee, he or she has to work towards the goal of the firm by avoiding, or rather overcoming, or rather negotiating with the situations where there are conflict of interest. And follow the law. They have to follow the laws of the organization, abided by the legal duties of the employees, which is called law of agency. What is a law of agency? The laws that specifies the legal duties of employees towards their principal is called the law of agency. And there are also family and social responsibilities, because every employee is not just a worksman or a person whose identity is confined to that institution or organization where he functions, where he works, but he is also a social being and also will have a family. So he has certain responsibilities towards the society and also towards his family members. And quite often there might be some situations where things might conflict with each other, and it is very important that such conflicts are negotiated properly and adequately. We'll wind up this session now.